Welcome to Heartline Stories, where every heartbeat tells a tale. Today, we bring you a story filled with unexpected twists and a secret that changes everything. What happens when a billionaire steps into a world far from his own, only to cross paths with his past, a shelter, a baby, and a truth that will leave you speechless? Who holds the key to this life-changing revelation? Stay with us and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Heartline Stories for more tales that keep you on the edge of your seat. Grayson Harper was one of the richest men in America. He owned tall buildings, fast cars, and even a private island. But something was missing in his life. Grayson didn't know it, but he was lonely. His days were filled with meetings and his nights were spent in his big empty mansion. One rainy afternoon, as Grayson sat by his office window, looking at the busy city below, his assistant, Ms. Kelly, walked in. "Sir, there's a fundraiser happening at the city shelter today. It's for families who don't have homes. They invited you as a guest," she said. Grayson didn't usually go to such events, but today he felt like doing something different. "Sure, I'll go," he replied, surprising even himself. Later that evening, Grayson arrived at the shelter. The place was packed with people. Volunteers were handing out food and blankets, and children were playing with donated toys. Grayson looked around, feeling out of place in his expensive suit. As he walked through the crowd, his eyes landed on someone he hadn't seen in years. There, sitting on a small couch, was Olivia, his ex-wife. But what really caught his attention was the tiny baby in her arms. The baby had big, curious eyes and chubby cheeks. Grayson froze. Memories of his time with Olivia came flooding back. They had been happy once, but his obsession with work had driven them apart. He hadn't seen her since their divorce years ago. He took a deep breath and walked up to her. "Olivia," he said, his voice soft and unsure. Olivia looked up, surprised to see him. "Grayson," she replied. Her expression was a mix of shock and hesitation. Is that your baby?" Grayson asked, his eyes shifting to the little one in her arms. Olivia nodded but didn't say anything. She looked down at the baby, her lips pressed tightly together. Grayson felt a strange mix of emotions. He wasn't sure what to say next. Before he could ask more, a little boy ran up to Olivia, tugging on her sleeve. "Mom, can I have another cookie?" the boy asked. Grayson looked at the boy and then back at Olivia. "Mom," he repeated, confused. He had no idea Olivia had a son. Or, wait, was that boy his? "Olivia, what's going on?" Grayson asked, his voice now filled with urgency. Olivia hesitated, glancing at the boy and then back at Grayson. "It's complicated," she finally said. Grayson knelt down to the little boy's level. "Hey there, buddy. What's your name?" he asked gently. "I'm Noah," the boy said, smiling. Grayson felt his heart skip a beat. There was something about Noah's face, something familiar. He looked back at Olivia, his eyes demanding answers. "Olivia, is Noah my son?" he asked, his voice trembling. Before Olivia could respond, a loud crash came from across the room. People turned to see what had happened. A table had tipped over, and volunteers were rushing to clean up. In the commotion, Olivia stood up, holding the baby close to her chest. "Grayson, we can't talk about this here," she said quickly. "I'll explain everything, but not now." Grayson watched as Olivia walked away with the baby, and Noah following close behind. His mind was spinning with questions. Why was Olivia at the shelter? Was Noah really his son? And what about the baby? Grayson knew one thing for sure. His life was about to change forever. Grayson stood frozen, watching Olivia disappear into the crowd with Noah and the baby. His mind raced. There were too many questions and not enough answers. He wasn't used to feeling out of control, and this situation was testing every bit of patience he had. He decided he wouldn't leave the shelter until he understood what was going on. He approached one of the volunteers, a kind-looking older man wearing a bright yellow vest. "Excuse me," Grayson said. "Do you know Olivia? The woman with the baby?" The volunteer nodded. "Oh, Olivia? She's been coming here for a couple of months now. A strong woman, but she's been through a lot. She's one of the people we're helping get back on her feet." Grayson's stomach tightened. Olivia needed help. She had always been independent and determined. He couldn't imagine her in a situation where she had to rely on a shelter. "Do you know anything about the children she's with?" Grayson asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The man hesitated for a moment. "Not my place to share, sir. You'd best talk to her about that." Grayson nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Thank you." He looked around the room, hoping to spot Olivia again, but she was nowhere to be seen. He felt a tug at his sleeve and looked down to see Noah standing there, holding a cookie in his tiny hands. "Are you my dad?" Noah asked, tilting his head and looking up at Grayson with wide, curious eyes. Grayson was taken aback. He wasn't sure what to say. "Well, I'm not sure, buddy. I'd like to talk to your mom about that." Noah nodded and took a bite of his cookie. "Mom says you were too busy for us," he said through a mouthful of crumbs. Grayson's heart sank. I didn't know," he said softly. "But I'm here now, and I want to understand." Noah shrugged as if he didn't fully understand the weight of what he had just said. "Okay, Mom's with the baby. She's probably upstairs." "Upstairs?" Grayson repeated. He looked toward a staircase at the corner of the room. Noah nodded again and skipped off, leaving Grayson standing there, feeling a mix of guilt and determination. He decided to follow Noah's lead and headed toward the stairs. As he climbed, the sound of the bustling shelter faded behind him. The upstairs was quieter, with fewer people. He found Olivia sitting in a small room, rocking the baby in her arms. She looked up as he entered, her face tired but still holding the strength he remembered. "We need to talk," Grayson said firmly. Olivia sighed. "I know." She gestured to a chair across from her. "Sit." Grayson sat down, his eyes fixed on the baby. "Olivia, I need to know the truth. Is Noah my son? And what about the baby?" Olivia looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding how much to say. "Grayson, yes, Noah is your son, but you weren't ready to be a father back then. You were so caught up in your work, in your world, that I didn't think you want to be part of this." Grayson felt like the wind had been knocked out of him. He had a son he had never known about. "And the baby?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's complicated," Olivia said, avoiding his gaze. "It's not what you think." Grayson frowned. "Then tell me what it is. I deserve to know." Olivia opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching the room. A young woman in a volunteer uniform appeared at the door. "Olivia, we need you downstairs. There's an issue with the food delivery." Olivia glanced at Grayson, then back at the volunteer. "I'll be right there," she said. She stood up, holding the baby close. "Grayson, I'll tell you everything, but not right now. Please stay here. I'll come back." Grayson nodded, though his frustration was growing. He watched as Olivia left the room, the baby still in her arms. He was alone now, surrounded by questions and a newfound responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready for. Grayson sat in the quiet room, his mind swirling with thoughts. He looked around, taking in the modest surroundings of the shelter. This place, so far from his luxurious world, felt oddly grounding. He leaned back in the chair, staring at the doorway where Olivia had disappeared moments earlier. As he waited, his thoughts wandered to Noah. The boy seemed so full of life, so carefree, yet the idea that he might have missed years of his son's life gnawed at him. Grayson couldn't help but feel a deep pang of regret. If Noah was indeed his child, how could he make up for all that lost time? The baby, however, was an even bigger mystery. There was something in Olivia's voice when she said, "It's not what you think." What did she mean by that? Grayson felt like he was piecing together a puzzle, but the more pieces he gathered, the more tangled the picture became. He was snapped out of his thoughts by the soft sound of footsteps. Grayson looked up, expecting Olivia, but instead, it was Noah who peeked into the room. "Hi," Noah said, stepping inside. Grayson smiled faintly. "Hey, buddy, what are you doing up here?" Noah shrugged and hopped onto the chair next to Grayson. "Mom is busy. I got bored." Grayson chuckled lightly. "Fair enough. So, Noah, what do you like to do for fun?" Noah grinned. "I like to draw. Do you want to see?" He pulled a folded piece of paper out of his pocket and handed it to Grayson. Grayson carefully unfolded the paper. It was a colorful drawing of what looked like a family: a woman, a boy, a baby, and a man wearing a suit. The man stood a little apart from the others. "Is this your family?" Grayson asked. Noah nodded eagerly. "That's me, Mom, the baby, and, well, I didn't know what my dad looked like, so I just guessed." Grayson felt a lump in his throat. He looked closely at the drawing and noticed something else. The man in the suit had a faint smile, but his eyes looked sad. Grayson wondered if that was how Noah imagined him. Before Grayson could say anything, Noah leaned closer. "Do you like it?" he asked, his voice filled with hope. Grayson smiled warmly. "I love it, Noah. You're a very talented artist." Noah beamed with pride. "Thanks. Do you know how to draw?" Grayson laughed. "Not really, but maybe you can teach me someday." "Okay," Noah said, his excitement contagious. The moment was interrupted by Olivia's return. She stood in the doorway looking at the two of them. Her expression was a mix of exhaustion and something else. Relief, maybe. "Noah, sweetie, can you go downstairs and play for a bit? I need to talk to Grayson." Noah nodded and hopped off the chair. "Bye, Grayson," he said cheerfully before running out. Grayson watched him go before turning back to Olivia. "He's an incredible kid," he said softly. "He is," Olivia agreed, sitting down where Noah had been. She looked directly at Grayson. "I owe you some answers." Grayson leaned forward, his heart pounding. "I'm listening." Olivia sighed and placed the baby, who was now asleep, in a nearby crib. She seemed to be gathering her thoughts. "Grayson," she began, "Noah is your son. There's no doubt about that. I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd want to know. You were so focused on your career. I thought it was better this way." Grayson felt a surge of guilt, but said nothing, letting her continue. "As for the baby," Olivia hesitated, her eyes dropping to her lap. "He's not yours, but his story, it's complicated. His father, he's not in the picture, and I couldn't leave him behind. He needed me." Grayson frowned. "Needed you? What do you mean?" Olivia looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and determination. "He was abandoned, Grayson, left at the shelter with no one to care for him. I couldn't just walk away, so now he's mine." Grayson stared at her, trying to process everything. His son, a baby who wasn't his, and Olivia's life so far removed from what it once was. Olivia, he said after a moment, I don't know where to start, but I want to help. I need to help. Olivia looked at him, her guard softening slightly. It's not that simple, Grayson. This isn't your world. It could be, he said firmly. Just tell me how. Olivia looked at Grayson for a long moment. Her expression was guarded, as if she wasn't sure whether to trust his offer. It's not just about money, Grayson. These kids, Noah, the baby, they need more than that. They need stability, love, and someone who's really going to be there for them. You've never been that kind of person. Can you really change? Grayson felt the words hit him like a blow. He opened his mouth to respond but stopped himself. Olivia was right. Up until now, his life had revolved around work, wealth, and success. He had been too busy to care about anything, or anyone else. But as he looked at Olivia, tired but fiercely protective, and thought of Noah and the baby, he felt something shift inside him. I don't know, Grayson admitted honestly, but I want to try. I don't want to miss out on knowing Noah. I don't want to walk away from you or that baby without doing everything I can to help. Olivia folded her arms, leaning back slightly. Words are easy, Grayson. Actions are harder. You left once, and I had to figure it all out on my own. Why should I believe this time will be different? Grayson leaned forward, his voice steady. Because I made a mistake before, and I don't want to make another one. I can't undo the past, but I can be here now. Let me prove it to you. Olivia studied him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of insincerity. Finally, she sighed. If you really mean that, there's something you can do. Anything, Grayson said immediately. There's a fundraiser event tomorrow for the shelter. It's going to help a lot of families, but we're short on supplies. I've been trying to pull it together, but I'm overwhelmed. If you're serious about helping, come to the event. Show me that you're willing to step into this world and do something real. Grayson nodded. I'll be there, and I'll bring whatever supplies you need. Olivia's eyebrows rose slightly in surprise, but she didn't argue. All right, she said. We'll see. She picked up the baby from the crib, cradling him gently. The sight made Grayson's heart ache in a way he didn't quite understand yet. I need to get him downstairs, Olivia said softly, almost as if the walls she had put up were beginning to crack. Can I walk with you? Grayson asked. Olivia hesitated but then nodded. Together they walked down the stairs, the sounds of the shelter coming back into focus. As they reached the main room, Noah spotted them and ran over, his face lighting up. Mom, can Grayson stay for dinner? Noah asked eagerly. Olivia glanced at Grayson, her expression unreadable. We'll see, Noah. Grayson knelt down and looked at Noah with a smile. Maybe not tonight, buddy, but tomorrow I'll be here for the fundraiser. I promise. Okay, Noah said, though he looked a little disappointed. As Grayson left the shelter that night, stepping back into the rain-soaked streets, he couldn't help but feel like his life was about to change forever. And this time, he was determined to be part of it. The next morning, Grayson woke early, feeling restless. The conversation with Olivia and meeting Noah had left a mark on him. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what lay ahead, but he was determined to show up and make an effort. He didn't want to disappoint them again, not after everything they'd been through. Grayson made a few phone calls to his assistant, Miss Kelly, and arranged for a truckload of supplies to be delivered to the shelter. Blankets, canned food, toiletries, and even toys for the kids were on the list. He wanted to make a difference, even if it was just a small step. When he arrived at the shelter later that day, The place was buzzing with activity. Volunteers were setting up tables, decorating the main hall, and unloading supplies from various donors. Grayson spotted Olivia near the entrance, directing people and holding a clipboard. She looked tired but focused. He walked up to her, carrying a box of supplies himself. "Morning," he said with a small smile. Olivia glanced at him, surprised. "You're here," she said, her tone neutral. "I said I would be," Grayson replied, setting the box down on a nearby table. "And I brought a few things to help out." Olivia looked over at the delivery truck parked outside, where workers were unloading the supplies. Her expression softened just a little. "Thank you, Grayson. This will help a lot." Grayson nodded, feeling a small spark of satisfaction. "What can I do? Put me to work." Olivia raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical but not willing to turn down help. "All right, you can start by organizing the donation table. We need everything sorted before the guests arrive." Grayson rolled up his sleeves and got to work. It wasn't the kind of task he was used to. His days were usually spent in boardrooms and conference calls, but he found it strangely fulfilling. As he worked, he noticed Noah running around with a group of kids, laughing and playing tag. The sight made Grayson smile. By midday, the fundraiser was in full swing. Families from the shelter mingled with donors and volunteers, enjoying the food and activities. Grayson spotted Olivia talking to an older woman who seemed to be in charge of the shelter. He decided to give her space and continued helping where he could. As the day went on, Grayson found himself spending more and more time with Noah. They played a game of catch in the courtyard, and Grayson learned that Noah had a quick sense of humor and an impressive imagination. The boy told stories about pirates and treasure hunts, making Grayson laugh more than he had in years. But as the sun began to set, Grayson noticed something troubling. A man in a tattered coat was lingering near the edge of the courtyard, watching Olivia and the baby from a distance. The man's gaze was intense, and it made Grayson uneasy. He walked over to Olivia, who was chatting with a group of volunteers. "Olivia," he said quietly, "do you know that man over there?" He nodded toward the man in the coat. Olivia's face paled when she saw him. She quickly handed the baby to one of the volunteers and stepped closer to Grayson. That's Mason," she said, her voice trembling. "Who's Mason?" Grayson asked, sensing there was more to the story. Olivia hesitated, glancing back at the man. "He's the baby's father." Grayson's eyes widened. "What's he doing here? Is he dangerous?" Olivia nodded slowly. "He's not someone I wanted in the baby's life, but he's never shown up here before. I don't know what he wants." Grayson felt a protective instinct he hadn't known he had. "Do you want me to talk to him?" "No," Olivia said firmly. "I'll handle it. Just stay close in case I need you." Grayson watched as Olivia walked toward Mason, her posture tense but determined. He stayed nearby, ready to step in if things went wrong. The tension in the air was palpable, and Grayson couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter could change everything. Olivia walked cautiously toward Mason, her shoulders straight and her jaw tight. Grayson kept his eyes fixed on the two of them, his instincts telling him to stay ready. He could see Mason shifting uncomfortably, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn coat. He looked ragged and restless, his gaze flicking between Olivia and the bustling fundraiser behind her. "What are you doing here, Mason?" Olivia asked, her voice steady but low enough to keep their conversation private. Mason shuffled his feet, glancing nervously at Grayson, who was standing a short distance away. "I just came to see him," Mason muttered, jerking his head in the direction of the baby. I've got a right to know how he's doing. Olivia crossed her arms, narrowing her eyes. You have no rights when it comes to him. You made your choice when you walked away. Mason's face twisted, a mix of anger and guilt flashing across it. You don't understand. I didn't have a choice back then. Things were bad. But I've changed, Olivia. I just want to be part of his life. Olivia shook her head firmly. You think showing up like this is going to fix everything? You don't get to just waltz in and disrupt everything we've built. Grayson couldn't hear every word, but he could tell by Olivia's body language that the conversation was tense. He clenched his fists, trying to resist the urge to step in. This wasn't his battle, at least not yet. He noticed Noah watching the scene from a distance, his face full of curiosity and concern. After a few moments, Mason's tone grew more desperate. I'm not here to cause trouble, Olivia. I swear. I just want to help. Olivia's expression softened slightly, but her guard didn't drop. Help? How? You don't know what he needs. You don't know what we need. I can start over, Mason insisted, his voice cracking. I've been trying to get my act together. If you just let me— You're too late, Olivia interrupted, her voice colder now. He doesn't even know who you are, and I'm not going to let him get hurt because you suddenly decided to show up. At that moment, Grayson stepped closer, unable to hold back any longer. Is everything all right here? He asked, his eyes locking on Mason. Mason straightened, his expression shifting to one of defiance. And who are you? He asked, his tone sharp. I'm someone who cares about them, Grayson replied evenly, refusing to be intimidated. If Olivia doesn't want you here, then you need to respect that. Mason glared at him, but Olivia raised a hand. It's fine, Grayson, she said, though her voice wavered slightly. I can handle this. Grayson hesitated, then stepped back, his protective instincts still on high alert. He noticed Noah inching closer, his small hand clutching the edge of a table as he tried to make sense of what was happening. Mason, if you really want to help, then prove it, Olivia said, her voice softening just a little. But don't think for a second that you can just show up and fix everything. Actions speak louder than words. Mason nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping as if the fight had drained out of him. I'll prove it, he said quietly. You'll see. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Olivia let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling slightly. Grayson stepped back to her side, his expression full of concern. Are you okay? Olivia nodded, though she didn't look at him. I don't know what he's up to, but I'm not going to let him disrupt our lives. Noah ran up to her, tugging on her arm. Mom, who was that man? He asked, his voice small and unsure. Olivia knelt down, pulling him into a hug. Just someone from the past, sweetie. Nothing you need to worry about. Grayson watched them, his chest tightening. He knew this was far from over. Whatever Mason's intentions were, they would have to deal with them together. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a purpose, one that went beyond wealth and success. The hours after Mason's abrupt appearance passed in a tense blur. As the fundraiser wound down, Olivia tried to focus on helping the volunteers pack up supplies and clean the shelter. But her mind kept drifting to Mason's words. His promise to prove it left her uneasy. She didn't trust him, but deep down, she wondered if he truly meant what he said, or if this was just another one of his schemes. Grayson stayed close, helping where he could and keeping an eye on Olivia and Noah. It was clear to him that Olivia was carrying a heavy burden, and while she put on a brave face, he could see the cracks. He wanted to say something to reassure her, but he wasn't sure if his words would make any difference right now. Later that evening, as the last of the guests left and the shelter quieted down, Olivia finally had a moment to sit and catch her breath. She sat on a worn-out bench near the entrance, the baby sleeping soundly in a carrier beside her. Grayson approached, hesitant but determined to offer support. "Long day," he said softly, taking a seat beside her. Olivia nodded, staring ahead. "Feels like it never ends." Grayson leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "About earlier, Mason, is this something you've had to deal with before?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Number, I didn't think I'd ever see him again. He disappeared when I told him I was keeping the baby. No calls, no visits, nothing. And now out of nowhere, he shows up." Grayson frowned. "Do you think he's serious about wanting to change? Or is he just here to cause trouble?" "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "And that's what scares me. Mason always knew how to talk his way out of things, but his actions never matched his words. I can't afford to let him disrupt our lives. Not after everything we've been through." Grayson felt a surge of protectiveness. "You're not alone in this, Olivia. Whatever happens, I'm here. For you, for Noah, and for the baby." Olivia glanced at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I appreciate that, Grayson. I really do. But this isn't just about showing up. It's about staying. Through the good and the bad." "I understand," Grayson said firmly, "and I'm ready for that. I don't know how to fix the past, but I can be here now." Before Olivia could respond, the sound of a soft cry interrupted them. The baby had woken up, his little face scrunching up as he fussed. Olivia leaned over to soothe him, her hands gentle and practiced. Grayson watched her, marveling at her strength and resilience. "Can I help?" he offered. Olivia hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Sure. Here, hold him for a minute." Grayson carefully picked up the baby, cradling him awkwardly at first. The tiny bundle seemed impossibly fragile in his arms, but as he adjusted his hold, the baby's cries quieted. Grayson felt a strange warmth spread through him as he looked into the baby's wide, curious eyes. "What's his name?" Grayson asked softly. "Liam," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Liam," Grayson repeated, smiling. "He's perfect." For a brief moment, everything felt still, like the chaos of the day and the uncertainty of the future didn't matter. Grayson realized that in this small, quiet moment, he was holding a piece of something bigger than himself, and he wasn't going to let it slip away. The days following the fundraiser brought a new rhythm to Grayson's life. He found himself spending more and more time at the shelter, helping where he could and growing closer to Noah and Liam. It was a world so different from his own, yet it felt strangely fulfilling. Mason, true to his word, made an effort to stay away, but Olivia remained on edge, knowing he might resurface. She focused on her children and the fragile trust she was beginning to rebuild with Grayson. One quiet afternoon, Grayson sat with Noah, helping him sketch a picture of a pirate ship. "Grayson, are you my dad for real?" Noah asked suddenly, his pencil hovering over the paper. Grayson set his own pencil down, taking a deep breath. "Yes, Noah, I am. I didn't know about you before, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Noah studied his face for a moment, then broke into a grin. "Okay, but you have to promise to play pirates with me every weekend." Grayson laughed. "You've got a deal." Meanwhile, Olivia was watching from a distance, holding Liam in her arms. She still had her doubts, but seeing Grayson with Noah gave her a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something new, something better. Grayson, for the first time in years, felt like he truly belonged. His wealth and power no longer defined him. What mattered now were the bonds he was building with Olivia, Noah, and Liam. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them, together, as a family. And so Grayson's journey wasn't just about finding his children. It was about rediscovering his own humanity and learning that sometimes the greatest treasures in life can't be bought. They're found in the hearts of the people we love. The end. Thank you for letting me be part of this story with you. Let me know if you'd like to create another adventure together.